Okay, this is chapter 1.2, adding integers, and we're going to start by adding integers with the same sign. And first let's remember what an integer is. An integer is any of the numbers that fall on the number line, kind of like the whole numbers and the natural numbers, but it also includes negative numbers. So we could say -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3, and we could extend by using ... in both directions into infinity, and those are integers. Okay, all the numbers, negative and positive, and including 0. And we're going to add integers with the same sign. So the same sign has a rule. If you add integers with the same sign, you add the absolute values. So you're going to add absolute values, and then you're going to use the common sign. Okay. And I think you can, not sing, S-I-G-N. I think I was thinking about singing. Haha. Okay, so we're going to add the common sign. So if we're adding -3 plus -2. Going to just add the absolute value, and the absolute value of -3 and the absolute value of 2 is 3 and 2. We add them together and we get 5, and then we use the common sign. That means the sign they have in common. Since both these numbers are negative, it's going to remain negative. So 3 plus 2 is -5. If we did if we had two positive numbers, say the same two, 3 plus 2, we would add the absolute value of 3 and the absolute value of 2 the same way, although 3 plus 2 is, the absolute value is just +3 and just +2. And we still get 5. In this case, they were both positive numbers, so we're going to keep our positive number. That's basically how it goes. It seems pretty easy. Let's look real quick at a number line and we can see why it works. We'll do that thing where we did -3. Oops. -3 plus -2. And a lot of times they'll put a parenthesis around because you don't want to get confused by having a plus and a minus sign next to each other. But it's just -3 plus -2. And if we start at 0, here's 0, and then our first number is -3, so that's back here. And we start at -3 and we go in the negative direction 2 more. We're adding a -2 onto it. And so we're going to start here and we're going to go backwards because it's -2. Okay? So it ends up getting to -5. So we started at -3, we added another -2, and we just continue going in that negative direction. That should work. If we want to, we could show that we started at 0 and we went -3. So we started with -3 and then we continued going in the negative direction 2 more. So we started at 0 and then went 2 more in the negative direction, and that got us to -5. I think that that's pretty easy to see, and the number line is just a good check, but typically you don't have to do it that way. You may just do something like 6 plus 8. These are both positive, so you add 6 and 8 and you get 14, and then you think, well, they're both positive, so my answer is positive. You might do something different where you have -6 plus -5, and you think, well, these are both negative, but I'm just going to add 6 and 5. 6 plus 5 is 11, using the absolute values of -6 and the absolute value of -5. But since they're both negative, and we saw our example up here where we started going negative and then we continued going negative, our answer is negative. And remember that this is kind of a rule that it's helpful if whenever you're adding integers with the same sign, both negative or both positive, you just add them up and then you keep whichever sign you're using. And these are positive, so it becomes positive. These are both negative, so it becomes negative. When we start adding mixed numbers, it gets a little more confusing. Okay, so we're going to add integers with different signs. We are going to do that. And I'm going to show you real quick how you do that. You still do the absolute value thing. You might have 8 plus a -10. So in this case we have a +8. We don't have to write that positive. We can just know that it's positive because it doesn't say it's negative. And we have a -10. and we're going to subtract the absolute values from each other. So the absolute value of 8, if we go ahead and add, just like we did before, we're going to add the absolute value signs. Okay, so the absolute value, we have 8 and we have 10, and if we absolute value of negative 10 is 10, and if we subtract them, 10 take away 8 is 2. And now what we always want to think about is that the absolute value, when we take the larger absolute value and subtract the smaller absolute value from it. It wouldn't work so well if we did 8 minus 10, but it works great doing 10 minus 8. That's 2. And then we have to think about which one was a greater number farther away from 0. And since 10 was farther away from 0, our answer is the same sign as the 10. And since 10 is negative, our answer is negative 2. Let me show you how that looks on a number line, because that is helpful for understanding. Okay, you start at 0 again, and this time you go 8 in a positive direction, because we have 8 plus a negative 10, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to start by going 8 in a positive direction, and then when we get here, now we're going to turn around and we're going to go 10 in a negative direction, which is this way. And we started with plus 8 and we go minus 10, and it ends us up at negative 2. You see, we started at 0, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we go backwards 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it gets us to negative 2. So this is a really great way to see what's happening. But the idea is simpler than that once we get used to it. So let's look at a couple of those. Let's say 5 plus negative 8. Okay, so this is a positive 5 and a negative 8, and we're going to just take the absolute values of each of those, which means that we have a 5 and we have an 8. But we're going to take the larger one and subtract the smaller one from it. 8 minus 5 is 3. And then because 8 is more negative than the 5 is positive, it's a bigger number. That 8 is bigger and it's negative, so our answer is negative. That's all I was trying to say before. What if we do it the other way around? So our first number is the negative 1, like negative 3 plus 9. Now we do the same thing. We take the absolute value of both, so we have 9 and 3. Okay, and then we subtract large minus small, and we get 6. So the answer is 6. And it could be a negative 6 or it could be a positive 6, but since 9 is a bigger number than 3, and if 9 is positive, we're going to have positive 6 as our answer. And again, on the number line, it's easy to see. We start at 0, and we go backwards 3. 1, 2, 3 to negative 3. And then we go forward 9. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that ends up being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we knew it was 6 all along. See how great that is? Okay. Now, there is one other thing you need to know about. It's the additive inverse, and that's just the sum of an integer and its additive inverse is 0. The sum means you add them together. The sum, let me write it down, ADDITIVE inverse. INVERSE. So you take two numbers, and when they add up together, you get 0. So the additive inverse of negative 25 is positive 25, because you get 0. The additive inverse of positive 3 is negative 3, because when you add positive 3 and negative 3, you get 0. And we don't know this name. Well, in fact, I don't even use this name very often, additive inverse, but it is really important for algebra because we're always doing this. We're always trying to undo something, whether we're adding something or subtracting something away so that we get back to 0. Example is x plus 4 equals 10, and I want to find out what x is. Well, I do the opposite, the additive inverse, plus 4 minus 4, and I do that to both sides. This becomes 0, and it leaves me with x. 10 minus 4 is 6. So x is 6. And I probably could have figured that out. 6 plus 4 equals 10. But the additive inverse helps us in algebra. That might be all that you have to do. Adding More than 2 integers is something I think you can figure out on your own, but I'll show you really quick what happens if you do something like that. More than 2, so you have 50 plus negative 40 plus 75 plus negative 50. And it's important that you kind of, you can put them together however you want, but it's kind of nice to go left to right, and that's sort of a rule unless you know some tricks. So remember the pen, PEM. So parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So we always go left to right. Okay, so 50 plus negative 40. We're adding, and they're opposites, so we subtract them. 50, let me try that again. 50 minus 40 is 10, and you probably could have done that in your head. 50 plus a negative 40 is 10. And then we're going to just rewrite it out with the rest of the numbers still here. Okay, now we're going to do the 10 plus 75. That's pretty easy. 85, it's not 88, 85 plus a negative 50, and this is the first step, this is the second step, and then the next step is 85 plus negative 50. Again, we're going to do the absolute values, 85 and 50, and because one's positive and one's negative, we're going to subtract them. 85 minus 50 is 25. It's 35. And so our answer is 35. 85 is bigger than 50, so it's a positive answer. So 35 is the answer. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't want to keep you any longer because I try to keep these videos to 10 minutes or less, and I think I've gone over that.